No, you're all right.
We're live. We're live.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is the Facilities Committee meeting, Council Rock School District Board of School Directors, Monday, March 12th. And we're beginning a little late to accommodate public comment. So it's, but it's 8:40. And we'll go around the table and allow board members here to identify themselves. Mr. Taylor, you can start, please.
Well, I'm Doug Taylor. I'm the Director of Operations.
Denise Brooks, School Board.
Marion McKee, School Board.
Matt Feddersen, Director of IT.
Ed Tate, School Board.
Nancy Carroll, Public.
Mark Vilik, School Board.
Sue Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
And we'll probably have another couple of school board members join us, who are just taking a break in the hallway. Mr. Taylor, if you would, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I will move this as quickly as possible because Dr. Elliott does have a piece of this at the end. We specifically, for your knowledge, put it at the end because you originally had a PTO meeting. You were going to be here late. It was late now. It is actually early based on the time of the first meeting. So I'll move it quickly so that Sue can speak to the last piece of this. Energy management, facilities improvement, project update, facilities improvement, project update, continuing capital improvement, project update, miscellaneous, board and consent agenda items for this coming board meeting, upcoming agenda items, and public comments for facilities. And then Dr. Elliott can talk about the demographic services proposal and public comments relative to the proposal as well after that. Energy management, pretty much on task, staying at the 89 cents per square foot for electric district-wide, which is an exceptional number. Everything has been staying on task as we moved into December. The next one will be the first report for the new year. They're always a couple months back, so they can collect all of the rates, all the bills, and prepare this.
89 cents a month.
89 cents a square foot. Electric. So facilities improvement update, both the new town.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? What's the interval for the 89 cents per square foot for what?
It's the dollar per gross square foot. Total project cost for gross square footage of the district.
Is that annualized or is that monthly?
I believe it's
Annualized? Okay.
Per, but I believe that's the case.
Yeah, that'd be good, because that's a big difference, obviously. Yeah, thank you.
Both of the Newtown and Holland Middle School projects are on or ahead of schedule. They will both absolutely be ready for students for the 18-19 school year. Continue to share the monthly progress reports with the board. Send those out as a Friday event normally each month. The remaining furniture deliveries for Holland Middle School are scheduled for the middle of July. The furniture deliveries for Newtown Middle School are scheduled for the middle of June. Because it's a new school, we were able to get that project wrapped up around May, beginning of June of this year. The existing building will then be demolished, and that part of the project is about another year in itself.
Can I ask a question? Because it came up at the meeting, was that superintendent, the academic standards superintendent. Because the buildings aren't going to be done in what is traditionally the time that like sixth graders would come and visit the schools and whatnot, are there things planned? I guess these things are going to happen over the summer where they can see the schools, or how's that being handled?
Yeah, the principals will schedule transition visits and activities as they typically do.
They typically do it in May.
They do other things at the beginning of the year where they have like a transition kind of activities for kids. So they'll plan things to bring the kids into the building and acclimate them to the building. Yes.
So in Holland Middle School, you can get into a lot of pieces of the building, just not the ones that have to finish around the kids. So primarily that's the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the library, finishing the last two pieces of classroom pod at the upper level. But they can see pieces that look just like it in the rest of the building. So Rich can take kids around most of that building. Newtown Middle School, by the by June 1st, is going to be in pretty good shape. So I don't know what Tim's plan is, but at some point he'll be able to start bringing kids over to that school after that time. If he's going to plan something over the summer before the school year's up, I'm not really sure.
So kids would be able to come in and tour the building even before there
Before
was.
they start the 18-19 school year, possibly, depending on timing. Yeah. So we're working on the building moves, planning for the moves. We had our first meeting with Richboro Middle School staff today. The moving contractor was there. I was there. We had Barry and some other folks and the moving contractor. And we talked to the staff about how it's going to feel. Started to talk about more of the details of what it's going to look like. Took questions, trying to alleviate some of the anxiety associated with moving your stuff somewhere else, how you're going to find it, and how we're going to load the classroom. There's a lot of things that have to happen to do that. So we had the first of 4 meetings today. Newtown Middle School, as I said, will occupy admin in May, possibly get them in the office area. Not that they'll be out of the other school, but at least get them ready so that they can move into the new school as soon as summer hits and start to plan the new facility then. And we had a meeting to talk about the Newtown Middle School demolition activities and how we can accelerate some of that. Obviously not before kids are out, but during the spring break, take over a piece of some of the areas that require some of the environmental work. We have a week so we can partition places off, create the negative air pressure, have the environmental testing performed, remove some of the floors and things that have to come out, and then get the clean air clearances back from our environmental consultant before kids come back. Then when kids leave the building in June, we can begin to demolish portions of that building that will be in the way of the new parking lot that happens out in front of the new school. If we can do that and we can be efficient with it, we may be able to get the new staff lot and drop off in front of the building completed before the start of the 18-19 school year, which is currently slated to happen in 19-20. So we're going to continue to use the temporary lot that we created. Yeah,
1920.
Not 19-20, but 19/20. So we just talked about that, and that's great work. So just a couple of quick shots. This is the auxiliary gym. This is one of the new hallways in the Newtown Middle School. We're moving along. A lot of ceiling tiles still out, so we can get to some pipe fittings and identification of valves and insulation, things like that. But looking good. That's the Newtown Middle School auditorium. This is just a shot outside on the bus entry side, and things are going well. Holland Middle School, the spaces we talked about that students are still in, as soon as they're vacated by students in June, the contractor will take over and we'll wrap up those spaces by the middle of August. So primarily library, the gym, cafeteria, and site work. This is the new nurses suite that's under construction. This is the stage construction at Holland. Some of the back of the auditorium. This is the facade replacement that used to be the 1970s metal panels without windows, peeled it away, put in steel to support the brick and the new window systems and walls with actual insulation. This is the learning stair that connects the lower level with the upper level, provides a nice connection off the cafeteria for vertical circulation on the sides, kind of utilitarian stairs. And in the middle, a breakout area that you can put 30 to 35 students in. You can't see the wall here, but there's some monitors. There's the ability to plug in for PowerPoints and use it as a teaching space anytime during the day or after school.
What's the surface, please?
There's wood in here. It's a solid wood edge with wood.
What's accessibility?
Through the elevator, there is accessibility to seating here and below you can also sit. But obviously within this, there's not a lift to the kind of mid-span. The shot of the new entrance, the canopy is under construction. Those are some quick shots of what's happening. Wrightstown Elementary School, work in progress. The construction documents are about 95% complete. We're working on constructability and value engineering reviews now. All those comments will go back to the architect and their team to implement the changes that we identify or any detailed issues or anything we see that need to be corrected. PlanCom Part B, project accounting based on estimates, and PlanCom Part E, design development, will both be on the board agenda for your review and approval. Land development agreement for stormwater and the well are also on the agreement, or on the board agenda. Moving along, we had a lot of meetings, a lot of approvals, meetings with staff relative to the move to Richboro. Project goes out to bid on the 23rd, so we're moving quickly at this point. The bid phase, review of bids happens at the May facilities meeting, and then the board review of the final costs and recommendations will be in the middle of May. And the start of the construction will then be right around the end of May. And by the end of June, we'll vacate the building, and then the contractors can take over the building as well. So from May to June, the contractors can begin to create some of the phasing, staging area where they would work, put up some of the environmental silt socks or fencing to go around the site that wouldn't interfere with the students. Just begin to phase, and then they can start. Again, assuming that the board approves the project in May. So it would be a one-year project, and in August of 19, the staff and students would occupy the building for that school. PlanCom Part D, project accounting based on estimates. The submission outlines all the project costs, including the new construction, demolition, environmental remediation, site costs, soft costs, all of the things that we heard at the Act 34 hearing, essentially. So it says it tests the district's financial ability to make payments as required by PDE regulations. That's what the Act 34 hearing was for, the 30-day waiting period, and then the submission of this to the board for final approval. Part E is just schematic design. It's the use of the site, description of the rooms, equipment layouts, the bidding method, outline specs, and floor plans. They just want to see the general information. Unfortunately, with the way PlanCon works today, there's a moratorium. They're really not doing anything with these submissions, so we will get the board approval. We will submit them. We will hear nothing from them. Usually there's a hearing or a teleconference where we go to Harrisburg and we meet with them. That's not happening, but we want to put all this stuff in front of them, have them put it on their shelf, so that when the moratorium is lifted, we're at least in a position to say, hey, how are you going to help us financially? We followed your procedures. We put ourselves in the, in the system. Can you help us? So we're doing this in hopes that we're going to get some reimbursement down the road. Land development agreements. The solicitors are working on the final land development agreements. I talked to Eastburn and Gray today. He thought he'd have them by day's end, but I should have them tomorrow. The stormwater agreement is already attached to the board agenda. The other two, land development and well agreement, are not. As long as I see them tomorrow, I'll post them. If I don't, we'll have to remove those two from the agenda. I don't want to give you something like the last day. Won't create any upset there. Rolling Hills Elementary School additions and renovations project, schematic design update. We conducted programming meeting with Sam Smith, the principal over at the school, Barry Desco, myself, David Schrader, and we looked at the plans. We're working on some schematic plan options. I'm meeting with David tomorrow to take a look at what the progress is on those, and we plan to come back to you on April 5th here at facilities to give you an overview of the schematic design of the site and the floor plan, so that we can then from that begin to move forward with more detailed documentation. The other piece that's on the agenda for this week is the environmental investigations piece of the project, where Element Environmental comes in and they start to do more detailed investigations to see what materials may be there that would require us to do some environmental work as part of the project. So the project continues, and basically we're working on getting this underway when we vacate the Wrightstown students from Richboro Middle School, we slide Rolling Hills into Richboro Middle, and it allows us to complete this project and occupy it August of 2020. So that's the plan, and we're working hard to maintain that schedule. It seems far away, but in order to meet that, we got to continue to work quick now, and then we'll continue to come to you and give you updates. Facilities improvement project update moving. The bids have been awarded. We had meetings today with the first contractor. It's going well. I had a meeting with our staff. We had multiple sheets that look like this that identify the school, the tasks that need to happen, technology, computers, smartboards, projectors, wireless access points, switches, racks, copiers, cameras, card readers. We have maintenance, chart wells, Aramark, features items, furniture, pictures, equipment, items to be salvaged, items to be disposed of. There's a lot of stuff happening in each one of these schools. We're working hard to identify who is working with which pieces. And for the most part, things are moving around. We do have a lot of furniture that's going to be shaking loose that we have to find a home for. We'll talk about that shortly. So these are the teams that we identified for each of the projects, and we're fortunate that all of the players from all the movers contractually they own meeting with us about 4 times through this process. So we're having our first set of meetings this month with the staff. We delivered 500 boxes to each of the schools affected by the move today, so they can begin working on that. Contractors have their own set of boxes and materials that they're going to provide as well. So a lot happening. Meetings with the moving companies, communication is key, as with any process. So communication, who and how, coordination with one another to avoid interference in these projects. We have contractors working at some of these schools. We're going to have moving trucks coming in, furniture trucks delivering furniture, how we're going to avoid each other, where we're going to meet and put different things and stage it. So logistics is important. Action plan, the delivery of the products from the move. So all that's in motion now. Capital improvement project update. We did receive bids. We're at the point where review bid results for the facilities committee. We had 8 or 9 projects. Chancellor Center. The good news is TE Construction Services did the test dome replacement for us at Welsh Elementary. Did a fantastic job. A really good mason. They are the contractor that would be awarded Chancellor Center. The budget is requires about $192,000 adjustment upward. We did find when we did some analysis, there's lead paint. Even though this work was performed in the past, I don't know why, but the lead paint was never really evidently addressed. So we are left with that. So we're going to address it. Masonry reporting, the scope of work for it increased when we really started taking a close look at what's happening here. If you ever get a chance in the daylight, take a look around and see the building really needs a lot of work. The entry on this east side of the building, the beautiful entry that has the little masonry pier on top, that actually has to be marked down and be reconstructed. It's that bad. It's almost dry set at this point, the mortar. So.
On which side?
On the chancellor.
Front.
Yeah, chancellor side. So, and we have to do some latching work because that's what we're getting is, a lot of water in the building from that piece. So, at any rate, that building did finish upward of 192,000. The cooling tower enclosure, again, a good contractor, same guy. Did other work with him in the district, about 91,000 under budget, but we added some sidewalk and bollards, some railing infill adjacent to where we're working. Despite that, we're still in good shape. The fume hood at North is for the STEM program. It came in slightly under, and we added water and gas to that fume. So we're actually looking at all of the science areas at North to make sure that there's adequate ventilation throughout the existing spaces, because there was a concern expressed that during some of the activities they perform that there's odors and things. We want to make sure that they're getting the ventilation they need just in general. So that's something to study aside from this. North Transformer site improvements, that is under budget. North and South Fitness Center renovations is basically right on budget. And with that, at North, if you've ever been back to the fitness center, it's a very steep, narrow entry to the gym. We're actually adding double doors off the main hallway to make that space better, more easily accessed, and to move equipment in and out more efficiently. North and South court restoration, under budget slightly. We added drainage. We removed the mill and overlay of those tennis courts, as I talked about at the last meeting. We want to see what's happening with those courts down the road. So that cost did go down for some of those reasons. South athletic fencing and signage did go up. But as part of this process, we realized the thing we needed to do. The varsity field is the one that's closest to Rockaway. But if you look at the proximity of that field to Rockaway, it's actually very close. So close that we're going to add a timber guardrail along the road next to that field, just because I guess, you know, we really start taking a close look at some of these projects to see some things that are concerning. So we want to address the potential of a drifting car up there as a timber rail. We are going to, instead of putting the dugouts at that field, we're going to make the other field a varsity field. Put the dugouts there because there's more room to do it. We work with the athletic directors. So we did some shifting of things and some wayfinding signage in the site to help you identify where the building main entry is, where the auditorium entry is, where all of the different entries are. I know the first time I went, I had a little bit of a rough time finding where the front of the building was per se. And generally, if you're coming in Rockaway, you end up on the back side of the building. I mean, you think you're going to sneak around the side to get to the front and find out that you can't go up the side. You come back out and then finally go to the front. And it creates a lot of confusion.
Doug, because you had to think about the courts up there. The courts are lit. Is there any change in that lighting that would make it more energy efficient? Are we?
I don't think it would cover the cost and the savings.
Just wondering. It's.
So I have a question. When a project comes in almost twice what we thought the budget was, you just keep going on the project?
Well,
I'm confused.
we look at where they are overall with all of the.
Right, because if you have the money in other projects, I understand that, but we don't, right? So we're at $350,000 over budget. That project alone is $150,000, which is almost, it's more, you know what that is for me? It's $150 on $1 million, the percentage, you know what I mean?
Right.
Over, well, then it's twice the price that we thought it was gonna be, almost.
Agreed. So we just changed the scope of the work, and we also have, and I'll show you at the end, we have design contingency for each one of these projects that we put in because we don't know what the project scope will be initially to a full extent. So we have design contingency. That
I mean, you obviously want to do it, so I'm not saying that, but I'm saying,
No, it's a good-
at what point does it be like, well, we don't have twice the cost, so.
We also, and when we look at the bid results, we also had some issues with some of the bidders where some of the bidders looked like they may have been qualified with a lower number, but they didn't do what they needed to do, or they gave us information
Right,
that wasn't.
they couldn't do everything
So
they
they
said.
couldn't do what, so when we qualified the bids, sometimes you jump up.
And these happen, I know over the years, but usually the total budget is under, so I guess it's a little more
At the
sensitive.
end of the day, we were there with the total cost.
Okay.
So, I'll show you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The floors at Holland and Richboro are Hillcrest and Richboro. Again, TE is here, and Sargent Enterprises has done a lot of our environmental abatement, is that contractor to remove the floors. So they go in and they contain the space, remove the floors, because there is mercury-containing material in those rubber floors that is okay and safe in the condition that it is. But when you remove it from the space, you have to do it with an environmental contractor. They will do it. We have our environmental consultant that will clear the air as we do on all our projects. The other contractor will go in and put the new systems down. And the Sulfine roof project, again, it turned into a project that when we started looking at the details, we looked at all of the materials, it's unbelievable. I think you could name every material that's possible on a facade. And we're tying into these things, and there's probably 30 different architectural details. It's stone, it's masonry, It's wood, it's siding, it's stucco, it's metal, it's cast stone. Everything you could imagine is happening around the different terminations and juncture points of the roof. So there's also some skylights that are worthy of keeping. They're being used now. So at this, when you're replacing the roof, it's the time to put the new curb in and address the skylight. There's a bunch of skylights that we're going to remove because they're blocked out. We're not using them, so we'll remove them. We'll infill the roof and put the new roof over it. There's a lot of ventilation units that are rusted and damaged that we're going to replace while we're up there. There's some chimney that we're going to repoint because we're working right over top of it. So those things add to it, but it's the right time to do it while you're standing on the roof and working on it. When and if this building is renovated down the road, what we're doing to this project won't be undone by that. So it's a new roof, it needs a new roof. We've been working hard to keep water out of it. So, this was the issue talked about money, about 347,000 on the 3.9 million. When you take the design contingency out, it does reduce the numbers a bit. There's also the professional design fees that are based on a sliding scale fee. Some of those are lump sum, some are a percentage plus a lump sum, depending on the cost of the projects. So they went up by about $13,000 based on the sliding scale fee. When you back out these numbers, they're about, when you look at the reduction in the design contingencies, we're about 182,000 to the good. We reduced the design, the project contingencies down to about 500,000. So we have I don't know if I have another page. We have about, here it is, $220,000 in material allowances in the contractor's bids for certain things. So when they're working here, if there's additional repointing, there's a square foot cost for additional repointing. If they do less, they credit back whatever it is. So we have monies on each one of the projects. If these are unused, they're returned to us. Generally, some are used. We work to try to get some back. And we have a project contingency of 540,000. So when you look at those two numbers, we're saying we're right on budget, but we have almost 760,000 in contingencies included in that. So we're in good shape overall.
So Doug, the 760,000 contingencies, that's not counted in your adjustments on the right-hand column though, right? We're not seeing that 760,000 representative on the adjustment in the adjustment columns, are we?
We had a project contingency of 729 based on the initial, we reduced it to 546. We reduced it by 182,000.
Okay, and then
And that's how we say it.
the other 220,000 project.
The other 220,000 is in the actual, the total of the 3,903,000 includes those 200,000 in allowances in their base bids. So they're part of the bid numbers. So they'll all be broken out as individual projects. You can see the bid summary, the bid tally for each one of those projects, the number of bidders. We had a lot of competition, except for the north ventilation. We had multiple contractors for every job. That one project was hard to find a bidder, but we got a good one. They did a lot of work for us in other schools. So
Do we have one company that does the design work, or each individual contractor?
this every 3 years we rebid who our engineer of record or architect of record is. So it was Dewey for these 3 years. Before that, it was GKO Architects. They use a team of folks that they show us who their sub consultants are. So they're using Lehigh Valley Engineering for the mechanical, plumbing, electrical work. They would use Terry DeCruz, who does a lot of our civil work, or civil engineering work. Structural engineering, they have their own in-house structural engineers. So that's the team for the 3 years. I think they have a year left after this.
And that's not including the middle school work. Just the work on the middle schools with the large projects.
No. Those are Schrader and Bresnik.
Right.
There's no patent or patent,
The only project we have is the roof project, which is through US Communities,
Right,
which
right.
is a governmental purchase project.
The reason I say this is because for a while there, we were getting fence prices that were knocked dead. We were looking at these things going, they must have bid it wrong, and then they do the job. Those guys still bidding on this?
Some of those, yeah.
Make the money up then, I guess. So here's my question, which is, to Wendy's point, you came in 150,000 more. What's the cost of that building?
Well, you don't do it. I mean,
I understand, so I mean, well, I guess that's my question, which
That
is,
falls apart right now.
well, no, it's fenced, so I'm trying to figure
well,
out.
it's not really fenced, so some of it's
You just
fenced.
call it fenced?
We call it fence. Some of it is a backstop. Some of it is foul line fencing to protect the fans of the fields because there is no, the baseball field does not have foul line.
Let me just
fencing.
ask a question, very important to me at least, which is, at one point, we had booster groups that said, we want to put in fences, we want to put in dugouts. And they did, and we said, okay. Am I replacing things that were donated?
No, in this case, we're extending fence that doesn't exist. We're putting up a Title IX, the softball field at north
Yeah.
has a scoreboard and dugouts. At south it doesn't.
So we should, see, and that, just so we're clear, that scoreboard was donated.
Not the solar scoreboard at north.
At north?
At,
One-
Football one.
at south,
No, you're not right, and don't need to correct me. The one that's out in the softball field was donated.
the one at north at the softball field that we put in a year or two ago was not
There
done.
was one that was donated.
There may be.
It may have been on the soccer
Might be a different.
Yeah, but that's my point, which is that, see, this is the unintended consequences, that we get these donations, they look great, and we run into a Title IX conflict. or anything. So my query is, you know,
This brings equity to the two high schools.
I hear you, but this becomes my problem, which is I get a donation of one, not forced to buy the other.
I'm still waiting for the donation for Walton Under Stadium for a scoreboard that we didn't get.
Yeah.
I'm
I would never do that.
And the other turf
I'm
field.
inviting anybody to get us a scoreboard for Walton Under Stadium.
Okay, no, that's, so I'm just trying to figure out, because I hear you say, well, we'll make up the money other ways, and the answer is, I knew to say,
But I don't want it to
I'm.
sound like if the project was planned for A, B, and C, but we added X, Y, and Z, so the cost didn't come in over budget, the scope of work increased. So we're getting
I
what we're
understand.
paying for, we're not getting half of what we thought we'd get. So
And I'm coming back to that thing, which was, when we increased scope, was it a need to have or a nice to have? That's,
I'd say the only thing that's on there that's an alternate bid is the wayfinding signage, which frankly, I think that site needs at the high school. And if it was an opportunity when a contractor was there to work on this.
I got you.
So we could take that out and it would reduce this whole thing by about $59,000. At the end of the day, we're making some great improvements there for a lot of people. And I think finding your way around the site is important, especially.
Well, and just because you're on that topic, for one quick question, which is, I drove past Apollo Middle School. They have new signage. And Hillcrest right next to it has the old signage. Are we updating Hillcrest, at least the front sign, so at least we look like we have a little cohesion in this, as a school district?
Not unless you pay for it.
Well, I did not do the fences like.
When we renovate Hillcrest, we will.
Well, you understand, my point. They're right next to each other.
I understand, I mean, I understand.
I'd ask you.
I'm
You
happy-
haven't said that.
I'm happy to add it.
You would be.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Next is the miscellaneous update.
Yes, miscellaneous. So custodial services, we talked about this in great detail. I'm trying to get the final agreement worked out between the legal department from Aramark and East Burning Gray. So that's going to be, it was today removed from our agenda for this Thursday because we don't have that language finalized. It'll come back next month, I hope.
And the pump that is really service level. Not so, how.
It's also, there's service level agreements, right, and what the consequences are, there's, when that was prepared, we were, closing Rolling Hills, but now Rolling Hills isn't closed. We were vacating a building that won't be vacated. So we're trying to make all the contract adjustments for how the plan is today. So district-wide storage considerations, this is one that is concerning me. We're moving roughly 100 classrooms when you think about all of the buildings we're moving around. Support spaces, common spaces, 4 buildings are about 425,000 square feet. We're going to displace materials. It's just natural. When you clean your garage, you have a pile of stuff you want to throw away, a pile of stuff you want to keep that you put back in the garage. But we don't have that garage. So my concern is, where are we going with this stuff? So smart boards, for example, that'll come out of Wrightstown Elementary School. We're putting new technology in, but we have a lot of that old technology. So they're great spare pieces to replace boards elsewhere in the district, projectors elsewhere in the district. So we save those. We save security cameras that might not be the current technology, but can replace some of the older technology. We'll keep them, we'll store it. Technology items, furniture, looking for roughly 10,000 square foot of space, which is about 12 classrooms that potentially we could lease. I know that ABK has, or supposed to provide us with about 6,500 square feet. And we tried to get there to see some space the other week. And the day we showed up, they had an alarm issue and everybody was outside and we couldn't even get in, the gate was locked. We weren't allowed in. Which is a perfect example of why that facility is going to be a little challenging to use as our storage building for frequent visits. And they've made it clear that if we find you space, you're not coming in here every day. It's federally restricted. We're creating medications that we just can't have in and out of here regularly. So my concern is, even if we get that space, it's not going to be as functional as we would like it.
Excuse me, Doug, where is that located?
That one is actually on the Terry Drive.
Okay.
But we haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been trying to get there for quite some time. They're willing to get us in there. We just have to work it out.
Was that with the 6,500? I'm sorry, Wendy. Was 6,500 part of the agreement, or was it more than that? I remember the agreement.
6,500.
I envisioned that being out the old Lockheed Martin site, but it's not.
So did I.
Yeah.
So did I.
That's what I thought.
We were told to meet at that facility, so I'm hoping that's where it is. But I don't. He said it's locked, it's regulated. You're not going to just get in and out easily. So I don't think they're really excited to give us the space, but we're trying to figure out.
Well, they're really excited to get the deal. When they agreed to it. So.
Exactly.
I understand.
And what about Richmond Middle School? What about the other parts of that?
We're going to try to use some of that space that we can, but I want to be careful. I mean, we already have stuff there. We're going to put some stuff in it, but it won't be enough to facilitate.
Well, then we find a way to put on that property. So, the whole idea here was to get rid of lease space, not lease more space.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. I looked at like 20 different facilities, and there's, the best I could find was about $5,000 a month for 10,000 square feet, which $60,000 a year. It's heated, it's air conditioned. I don't know if there's any interest in using it. If not, we're going to have to try to find a way to, and understand that we do cram it in Richboro Middle, which I don't know that we'll be able to fully do. When the day comes that we need to do something with the building, we're going to have a pile of stuff.
But then let's get rid of it.
That's going to
Because
be.
if holding smart boards for 5 years, we're going to trash them in 5 years anyway.
Well, I don't, what'll happen, what happens is, and I understand, I feel that way sometimes. I'm kind of a neat freak, so I don't like trash, piles of stuff, and I like it organized. But I'll get an email, hey, we need a new, we need our projector replaced, or we need 2 smart boards here. And so then we send somebody over, we grab 2, we grab it, and we go put them in, and then we trash the ones that are broken. So we will draw from them. It's just.
But we don't need to keep it all.
And
We're
I have-
not going to draw all of it. We keep a reasonable amount, what we might use in a year. Because 2 years from now, nobody's going to want those old smart
We'll
boards.
try to do that. So I'm inventorying what we have at Richboro Middle that I know we're not going to use, that we can't simply dispose of. We can't just give away, we have a policy. So we will inventory it, we'll put it on Penlink, and we'll try to do that early. And if we don't get anyone interested in it, then we have to determine if we use recycling value or what we do with what we can't get rid of. And then what we can, if the charge of the board is we're not interested in any space beyond KDK, then I will see what we can do to free up space at Richboro Middle School and basically, that space will be committed to it.
Smart boards will be around for at least the next 8 to 9 years, unless you're going to spend a lot of money to replace them. Because replacing them is expensive. It's less expensive for the district to actually put this stuff in storage, and then when we need boards have them, we need the trays, and we need the controllers. The thing we're running into is a lot of these boards are no longer supported by the companies. And the replacement cost, you're talking $2,500. So it's a lot less expensive to use the controller we have than spend $2,500 to replace the board. So unless we're going to renovate all the schools over the next 2 years.
Well, why do we have so much? Why is there so
There's a
much?
smart board in every classroom.
And you're gonna rebuild Wrightstown and put these smart boards back in Wrightstown, they're so good. Don't buy new. Then we don't need to store them.
Well, you only need to store them, right?
Yeah,
Which we can do at Richboro
if
Middle.
they're good, then let's not buy new
Richboro
ones.
Middle and Newtown have the newer technology. They have a
Yeah,
they have a
That's what
projector.
we're saying.
Okay, but,
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can put them, you can store them at Richboro Middle, and we can put them back up at Rice.
well, the point was, we're gonna be taking the
Exactly.
Middle down at some point.
You want to replace technology with old technology.
But that's,
But
then I don't
I
want
hope-
to people, we can't have.
I know,
people.
we're using those to replace them in the schools where technology hasn't been replaced yet. And that's. a
But
lot.
the other 4 schools are on the agenda.
They're on the agenda, but it's okay.
And I'm just telling you,
I'm just
I was
asking
not
if
going
we
to
want
spend
to
money
consider
to
storage or not.
storage stuff.
I'm not,
It's hard for
I'm just asking the
The
question.
courtyard is from Middle.
Listen, how many smart boards are you talking about?
Well, we're gonna have all the smart boards and projectors from the existing Newtown Middle School. We're gonna have all the smart boards and projectors from Wrightstown Elementary School, so however many of that's a bunch.
What about 75?
You start stacking those up, it'd be like,
So
what?
$200,000.
Clear out the auditorium or clear out
That's
the
just
gym.
those 2 things. Then we're gonna have some of the older cameras. We're gonna have a pile of 20 classrooms, 30 classrooms and desks. Like, you start piling those things up, you go, wow, this is.
But I mean,
I just
$10,000.
don't want to keep it all, if every time we renovate a school, we're renovating Wrightstown, the following year, we know we're renovating Rolling Hills. So I just don't think we need 3 schools worth of smart boards stored, or else if they're that useful, then let's just put them back in. But the other thing is, you have an auditorium and a gym,
Well, we're gonna use those for the students.
but you don't have to, they don't have both now.
The auditorium wouldn't be functional for storage, but the gym would.
Well, I would
But we
take the
rent
seats
it
out of
to
the
the
auditorium,
community,
use
it's
the
a space to
auditorium, the
use.
gym, but that is.
Well, I-
You have-
But we think you'd be, the only thing you'd have functional there is the stage, because all the seats are, unless we tear all the seats
That's what
out.
I'm saying.
And I'd like to see, let's get this KVK thing resolved. I mean, that contract was signed
We're trying to
forever
do
ago.
that.
Yeah, agreed.
And
I can say we've both been working hard to do that. I mean, that,
You have to realize too, that when you take the smart board out, it's so clear. You gotta package it, you're gonna store it, you gotta package it, because otherwise it becomes so much crap. You know, so when you take out the components and the pieces, if they can all just stand on the floor, they don't stand on the floor now, so you gotta get them in a box, you gotta put them away somewhere. They have to be,
So we don't, they just take the boards down and stack them just as they're on the floor.
and they don't get
That's fine.
crapped out for that, don't get broken.
I'm honestly good. I just wanted to know if there was any, I just really wanted to get the feel, if there was any interest in pursuing.
For me, one thing not to do, I don't wanna rent a $500 a month trailer, we put everything in, and then we just have this huge clump of moldy.
We
junk.
can't, that's the point. It has
I
to
don't-
be,
I
it
don't
has
wanna
to
do
be
that.
conditions.
Right, I don't wanna do that.
Not
Been there,
super cold, not
done
super
it.
hot, middle of the road. This stuff can't sit in a sea box and
Been
it's
there, done
sweaty and frozen and it'll be useless, so. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
So I am right on board with Wendy that we should be repurposing these, reusing these, this equipment, because there's no need to be spending money on new technology if this technology is good. I don't think there's any reason we can't have the same desk, same chairs, and same technology go back into the school. It just doesn't make sense if they're working well. The other issue I have is KVK, I don't think that was just, hey, let's do a nice thing for the school district. I think that was part of a legal agreement, was it not? So why can't we enforce this agreement that we have for 6,500 square feet? This is beyond you and Dr. Fraser calling up the people at KVK and saying, could we please come by and use the 6,500 square feet? I think this is a Rob Cox phone call to KVK to say, we are going to use that storage facility that you agreed to in the agreement when you saved millions of dollars.
Grand for us to rent the space. We can go to them and say, for 60 grand a year, we'll let you out of your $6,500.
That's a good idea.
See, every once in a while.
And then it's a wash, right? And that's a good idea, Wendy. So but the thing is that this needs to be put to bed, and it needs to be put to bed soon, because the longer it holds out there, the less weight the contract's going to have. It's absurd that we're still having this.
Maybe 60 grand, they get out of rent that space.
All right, well, I got it.
600 grand, because we need at least 10 years.
All I wanted was, no, you don't want the.
Got it.
I got it. You guys are clear.
Mhm.
So I will,
Have a good time, Doug?
thank you. Let me just move on if I could.
Please.
So, consent agenda items, we have stage curtain cleaning and fireproofing every 5 years. The curtains, although they're certified as fire rated, they have to be retreated. And they get a new certificate put on those to demonstrate that they're safe. The authorities having jurisdiction actually do come and look at those and make sure that they are current, so.
And at which places?
All except a couple of them.
So including Welch and Zill and the.
None of them have been touched in about 6 years.
Okay.
So, and here, the little curtain that divides Chancellor, that has to be treated, the boardroom, so. Paint supply bid, this is basically athletic field paint, traffic paint, interior paint. Rolling Hills Environmental Services, again by phase, they bill only to the phase that they're actually performing. So this is for the Rolling Hills Environmental investigations and documentation. Capital improvement bids 1811 through 18, and the roof, the $3.9 million. Wrightstown Elementary School Part D&E that we talked about. The agreements for Wrightstown. The custodial RFPs has been removed, so that will not be on the agenda. Otherwise, probable topics, this was not on there.
Great bit.
So, facilities improvement updates for the projects, Blacktop Part F for Wrightstown, which is construction documents, Rolling Hills presentation plans, site and floor plan. Richboro Middle School update, another project that we are getting numbers for is to make some modifications to Richboro Middle School, as we discussed at the onset, to get a couple little playgrounds in, to make sure that the playground area is safe. And that is, and some wireless access points in the school that aren't there today. And that's about it.
Or on your speed zone for Richboro Middle School.
We gave, they're working on the dock.
Same.
The township engineer, yes. That is it. Now, any questions specifically related to facilities? Because after that, I'm going to let Dr. Elliott take her piece, so.
Any board questions for Mr. Taylor? Public comment?
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So this is regarding the Rolling Hills grant that you brought up at the last meeting. Are we just way past the deadline now for that?
It is.
Done after,
We missed the deadline.
okay.
Yes, deadline for what?
The lead certification grant for Rolling Hills project.
We took a pass on it. Any other questions or public questions or comments regarding facilities?
Nancy? I want to know You promised that we would bring over something from the old Midtown middle when I first met you to the new middle. Has that been decided and what do we bring?
I can, yeah, we are working,
Bring a picture of Mark Bialik.
What?
Bring a picture of Mark Bialik.
we're working.
I mean, I don't care if it's a principal store. Just something that says, you know.
There's some things I'm trying to do, with, you know, if they demolish the old buildings and things I'd like to get out. There's some things that have been identified by Tim Long, the principal, things we want to get out of there, and put in the new building as well. So we are absolutely working on getting pieces of the old building and displaying them in the new.
Okay. Does the staff know what their changes are going to be yet?
That is not a question that Mr.
Does the
Snell.
staff know?
We're in the midst of that process right now.
Okay. The well agreements for Wrightstown, are we doing sewage and water differently than is being done now?
No. The well agreement is something that was discussed at the land and development approval. And all they want to do is the neighbors that immediately surround Wrightstown Elementary School, they didn't come out and request anything. The township solicitor said that generally a well agreement is prepared when a site is surrounded by a well, we all rely upon the wells. That if we're expanding the facility and we draw from the neighbors' wells because we made our site bigger, that we're accountable to assist the neighbors in making repairs to their wells if we actually draw from the ability that their current well capacity has today. So as part of that, they send notification to the homeowners. They have to send a letter to the township requesting to be involved in it. I think there's like 8, it's not a big number. If they're interested, then we will send a contractor out to perform a baseline so we understand what it is today, so that in the event that there is an issue down the road, that we have a baseline to compare to, so we're not, I don't believe anyone there would be an opportunist. We haven't had any issues with neighbors or wells to this point. And if then it would be reflected as how we would address the issue with those specific residents, should we have to help fix a well because we drew water. Now, in saying that, even though we're growing slightly bigger and the building
Slightly?
more, we are with the water saving fixtures and the service we're putting in, we're likely to use less water with the new building than we use now. So I really don't believe that we're going to see any issue down the road with this. So, and our solicitors are doing that language to make sure we're all in agreement with how.
Okay, in your list of, you had more wireless connectivity points, where are they going?
Well, 14 locations at Richboro Middle School currently don't have wireless access points. We added the equivalent parts to the elementary schools this year. Since Wrightstown is moving to Richboro doesn't have enough access points to accommodate the local parts, so we have to add access points.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carroll.
And at that point, every elementary school will have wireless connectivity.
They already do.
Okay.
Thanks. Please, yes.
I just have a question. Tom Middle School, come along great, very little stuff to take care of. Regarding the parking lot, I don't know if you know anything about it, but like when you go in, you go all around the circle, but it's not, I don't know if that's just construction phase, will that be?
It will be modified. Right now, we wanted to make sure that we address any potential stacking on the street and know we're in the middle of construction.
Okay.
But when it's finally complete, you'll be able to, when you pull in, you'll simply go straight, you'll turn left,
Right.
turn left, and you'll curl right around into
Okay.
the student drop-off.
So you keep doing your part.
Much more simplified, it won't be so safety as it is today, so.
And a little, question, probably not. Are you gonna have, I know Churchill with the area, we're gonna, they have like a little open house. Are they gonna do that for these schools too, do you know?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk, we'll have a ribbon cutting for both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will that be open to like parents?
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about.
I went to Tom Middle.
During the
Yeah,
break
yeah.
meetings, and we were talking about Newtown Middle School in August, and
I think that maybe they're both in August also. Yeah, yeah, we'll do something nice, usually kids get the kids involved.
Yeah.
Do something fun. It should be celebrated.
Thank you.
Okay. Is the administration looking to put any type of security in any of these facilities in light of what's occurred throughout the country that we're,
So
we're unfortunate?
from I'm always hesitant to talk about what we have in the buildings publicly because I don't think that helps us in terms of what we're, trying to prevent.
I can tell you that I can walk in Holland Middle and Hillcrest anytime I want with the other doors. No one's at them, they're not left open enough. It's probably through some.
Yeah, you will not be able to get into any one of, those doors will all be secured all day, unless teachers have a key fob or something.
It's something, and there's got to be a better way.
Well, that's part of, that has to be monitored during the day by staff for sure.
But there's no technology or anything that the district's looking into to secure the buildings more than they're already secure.
Those buildings will be secured, I think, in a way that we've standardized throughout the district. It won't be less secured, and they have some potential to be further secured if we decide to make any changes down the road, put some spare conduits and blank plates in to do a little more if we decide to do more. So we are roughing in the event we make changes, but I'd rather if we talk offline and, over Google publicly, so.
I guess what Mr. Rupp was saying about the improvements to the softball fields. I know that there's a lot of softball tournaments that are there throughout, and May comes almost every weekend, they have softball tournaments. Do they contribute, and is the money that they might pay to the school district just for regular maintenance, or is there any way some of that could be people that use the fields? I mean, I know, there's teams, there's the organization rents the fields out. Could that be used to defray some of that cost?
I'd have to defer to Bob Reinhardt in terms of where the monies go that we collect to, outside groups to use our facilities. I don't know that answer. I mean, I know that Pauline does a really good job in organizing all of the different outside groups and the money we bring in, and I know money in the turf is set aside for eventually, returfing north down the road. I'm not sure how the rest of the monies work and what buckets Bob puts those in as they're collected, so.
Closer to general fund. Typically.
Yeah, so all the money comes in and goes out in the same place, but we decided we're not trying to make enough from the softball, like we wouldn't replace something until we had enough money. So we just take it in, so it goes into the general fund and then we spend what we need to. So we don't, or the soccer or any of the sports, we don't directly align the money.
Our facility is on the line for the new year is 450,000. So that's everything. That's all the programs and everything.
Because
But
we use it for gym, so we couldn't, we wouldn't want to say we wouldn't do something on softball fields, we might use them for gym. So we.
Thank you.
Biz Ed, I'm sorry.
I have two questions connected with the security. I know that you can't say much because it's on there. But one is, I don't know if you've thought about, but extra security as going into and out of school. The last meeting, a parent talked about how she walked in the door while the kids walked down the hall and nobody even noticed that she was with them. So maybe some kind of beefed up security as the doors are open and kids are just walking in. My other question would be, so my student is a South student, but my son goes to the North preschool program. And as I sit there, the secretary that sits at the front desk, a student walks in and she just lets them in without them saying like their name or anything. Like, how do you really know that they're still a student? I mean, the kid in Florida was a previous student. I mean, does she know every student? I mean, obviously there's no way she can know every student in the school. It's a new school. But I sit there and watch, like, if you look like a student, you're just walking in, I guess, to go to the office. You have to go through the front the locker rooms and then I guess offices there.
You can't get into the school without going through the office before you're released into the school. So
So like the doors on the side, like where the preschool program is, that's locked too? So because there's the front doors for the second floor of Terrace.
I'm not sure exactly. We could look at it, together.
I'm saying.
I'm not trying to be evasive, but I just don't think it's really great to like throw it all out there for everybody's benefit.
No, I do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly not trying to be evasive. I'm happy to have a conversation, but I just don't want to.
I mean, I would have a conversation after, I'm just
Yeah.
bringing up the points that I've seen.
I mean, we have a lot of, and I understand, and, when these events happen, we get a lot of feedback again on pay. And like anything, you try to tighten things back up where they need to be, the doors propped open, all those things, and we need to be more diligent about a lot of those things, and I think. And it's sometimes it's as simple as you salt the sidewalks and the door closes, but the salt gets caught in the threshold of the door and it doesn't close. So we're even being more careful when we're salting for snow and ice and make sure that we keep everything swept at the doors so they're not getting caught up. But we are, I assure you, these new schools are, from a security standpoint, I think they're, as safe as a school can reasonably be. As a school can reasonably be.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
I have a question. If not now, when? And it's not so much to you as to Dr. Fraser, really. What's the status of our students wearing their badges? Well, every student's issued a badge. Let's leave aside the elementary school. It's pretty easy to identify an elementary school student versus a teacher, versus a parent. But let's talk at the middle school and the high school level. What's our policy on badges and students wearing their badges during the day?
They're not required.
Can we change that? I mean, if not now, when? If not now, when? Okay, that doesn't say. I remember I had gone to, when Bill Bell was still here, I went to a middle school, and I was amazed because one of the teachers was very petite, and I couldn't figure out why she wasn't in class. Teaching, not a kid. I have to think that a responding agency, it's not going to, it's a half-second difference, but that may be a half-second difference of responding to someone standing in a hallway. Can we start down the path? Because I've got students at the high school level now who are saying we're concerned about the kids who died, and we're concerned about ourselves. And so why couldn't we not say, if not now, when? We're going to start doing badges. We're going to have a grace period that says, look, we're not going to suspend or take any action against anybody, but we need you to start writing. We don't know who the kids are. We see them in the hallway. It's not right. It's problematic. I belong to other organizations. My office right now is very small. Everybody, it's 50, 60 people. We all know it. I work for large organizations. You wear a badge. And if you saw a guy on the floor and he said, who are you? And he goes, well, I'm from the office in Belgium. Like, how did you get around security? We took him back to security. Because the second part of this becomes, with all due deference to the people who said, well, I can get in the building, I can do this, and I can do that. Were I administratively in charge, when there's someone in the building that we don't know who they are, let's put this building aside. Let's put the building in lockdown. And that person is going to get picked up. It's going to happen 2 or 3 times. And that person is going to be picked up on a trespass. And that's going to stop real quick. Because I'll put it with the newspaper that parent was picked up on a criminal trespass because they violated the rules of being in the building. It's going to stop. I'm not picking on you, but I mean, and I'm sure there are administrative problems that will be a nightmare briefly. But if not now, when? Because I got parents' vested intentions. They're making the problem worse because everybody's response to someone being in the building, not everybody, and I overgeneralize, but the response to someone in the building who you don't know is always, you're lost, let me take you back there. You know what? You shouldn't have been in the building in the first place. We're going down the path, and if the person is not a good doer, is not a good deed doer, as they said in Wizard of Oz, it's not going to end well. So why don't we just try? I mean, we tried it before, and we got resistance from kids. I have to believe, high school kids, we talk about pressure about one another. This is a sense of community that's gonna start to make it work. The kids you spoke to, the kids who are here are brilliant, and they're brave, and they stood in front, and they said things, and let's be honest, they spoke about things that were important to them, and there were people who were oppositional to it, you know, not necessarily oppositional to them, but oppositional to the way things were being structured. And they were brave, and they were confident, and they did it. I think they'll support it. I really do. So I'm gonna ask the administration to explore it. It's not outside the realm of what we do. And I apologize if it becomes problematic. Let's talk about it, because we'll figure out a middle ground. There'll be a grace period, but at some point we'll have to work around it.
Start those conversations.
I agree, and I think the kids will be with us at this point. Elementary school, I think we're not good about that, but high school for sure, middle school probably. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Mr. Taylor, you're done, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, it's Dr. Elliott's turn.
All right, so you received 3 proposals. And this was at the direction of the board to look for multiple proposals for new enrollment projections based on our February board meeting. So the chart that you were sent, as well as proposals, are 3 strong options. I did some research, approximately 8 firms. These 3, I believe, are the strongest options for us to consider. So we have 3 different companies. Just let me highlight a few things about what each of them bring and some things for you to think about. So I did call references for all 3 of the companies, and all 3 references spoke very highly of the work they did. Felt the numbers were very accurate. But all companies were very responsive to their needs, so they all were very positive. The comparison chart that you're looking at, a couple things to highlight. So FutureThink, the one on the top, and Davis, the one on the bottom, they use a similar method to Sundance, kind of historical data, looking at housing and doing kind of a survival ratio formula to figure out enrollment projections. Additionally, Davis Demographics, that's on the bottom, they have their own GIS software called SchoolSite that they've developed, and they use that to create their enrollment projections. Cropper, which is the one in the middle, Cropper GIS, they use a different methodology than the other 2. Their methodology they call a cohort component method. They look at census data, do a lot of analysis of the district and the surrounding area of the district. They do some population forecasting. They pull in housing data as well, look at real estate markets and things. But they look at, when they're doing their projections, as noted in the chart, they look at some other things that they believe impact making a population forecast. Women of childbearing age, they look at mortality rates. They also look at migration, in and out migration in an area, and use those data to help make their develop their enrollment projections and their forecasting. There's some differences in the duration of time that the companies have said they would be able to complete the project. Again, noting that this duration starts after they get the data they need to start the work. So you see FutureThink says 2 to 3 weeks. The other 2 companies say about 6 to 8 weeks. So if we translate that to our timeline, pending board approval, if they're able to start shortly after the board meeting this week, we're looking at, with Cropper, probably the middle of April to the end of April, and the other 2 would be closer to the middle of May until they would be able to finish all the work that they do. The cost differences you'll see between FutureThink and Cropper, there's in the projection cost, which is cost just to do the enrollment projection, there's $1,000 difference. Davis is a little bit more expensive, but with Davis, you have to actually do a one-year contract. So it's not just do an enrollment projection for us, but now you have their GIS software access and some other things as part of this one-year package that they do. Compared to the middle column there, or the one that says additional information, that's just to give you some other comparative data, things that they, all of the firms, if there are certain above costs, additional hourly rates or things for additional services. I've listed there what some of their different services are, again, different roles that people play in their firm, whether they're the principal demographer, the GIS manager, what their hourly rates are. You see there's some differences in what some of them charge. So Future Think, if they come to an on-site meeting, it's $3,500 a day for an on-site meeting, as compared to Cropper, if you do an on-site meeting, it's $1,500, or web-based is $500.
Are they coming from Ohio in those first two, or do they have local people on the ground?
They're coming from Ohio.
So are their expenses built into the numbers, or are they gonna be plus expenses?
I have to check that.
None of them are coming from VA, so.
Yeah, I believe that, I'll double check their proposals, but Davis, I believe expenses are included in what they do, because their yearly rate includes specific things. I believe both Future Think and Cropper expenses would be additional costs.
I tend to think of on-site. I think on-site, I would think, just look at the number and work another hourly rate, and on-site's inclusive of the other one.
But I'll check that, Andy, just to make sure. I just need to look back through the proposals. So that just gives you some of the differences of what they do, what they offer. They all have a GIS system that they use and staff that they use for that, as we had with Sundance. So the second to last column from the right, it gives you just a point of comparison between some of the numbers that services that we've had to date from Sundance. So the enrollment projection for Sundance cost us $8,000. They did an update on the enrollment projection at no charge. And then the additional money you see there, the $12,000 up in the yellow top row, the $12,625 is calculating their total hours worked between the demographer and the GIS manager. Those hours include meetings that they attended here in the district when the committee met, as well as additional hours that they worked outside of meetings at the district where they were developing scenarios, doing things with numbers to pull projections together, or look at some of the different concepts we were looking at. So that totaled 107 hours worked between the two people. So to try to create some semblance of comparison, what I did was took the hourly rates that were given by the other companies and translated that into, okay, so if they worked the same number of hours for us doing the same kinds of things, here's about how much that would cost, just to give you some kind of way to compare, to see what we're looking at, knowing that, you know, there'll be, just as there was with Sundance, additional costs for things that are, you know, not necessarily included just in the hourly rate and the projection.
Did we use was Future Think was that listed that we used?
We have not used
We
them,
not know.
but we've discussed them previously.
Okay, that's where it came up. Okay, that's where, okay. We didn't use them, but I guess we discussed, okay.
So the thing that that we need to really think about, I guess, when making a decision is really what happens after we get this enrollment projection. So the redistricting committee has done extensive amounts of work already in looking at numbers and different scenarios, and really done a lot of work. They've taken the community feedback and done an additional work to try to come up with a plan to present to the board. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind, because we don't want to necessarily discard all that work that they've done. And they've built a relationship with Sundance and the demographer in that working relationship and really looking at numbers and asking questions and working with them, particularly at the latter end of what they've been doing with the demographer in particular, because he's able to make magic happen with the software right in front of their eyes and let them see what might happen. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind in trying to make a decision of going forward. Additionally, I've talked to several demographers, and all of them have said when you're comparing numbers, if you're within 2 to 3% of another projection, that's comparable. So you would expect that there's going to be some variance. So how much variance is too much? You know, over 3% is going to be too much variance, either over or under 3%.
But before you stop on that, we had less than 2 or 3% variance in what we were told when we closed Sterling Hills, and we had to leave it open. So the variance for me is what changes the decision, not what's acceptable. So if 1% change in the demographer's information changes the decision we would have in redistricting, then 1% is too much. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
So any decision made on redistricting has to encapsulate and up to, I would say, if 3% is set up to a 5% differential. So if Sundance says this elementary school is going to be at this capacity if you move here, but 1% change means that doesn't work anymore, then that can't be the recommendation, because that didn't happen last time. So it's fine if a new demographer comes in within 3% and we're like, okay, well, the original numbers were good. But then if decisions are made and there's a 1% change and that makes those decisions wrong, that's still a problem. So I guess what I'm saying is that's fine if we're gonna say, okay, well, the numbers are right. Then whenever the redistricting proposal comes back, if there's a change anyway within 3%, I want to know that that redistricting committee would keep with that projection. Because we're saying there could be 3% changes, and some percentage has to be acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But what we have to know is that the same decision would get made if there is that 3%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, if you have to learn a lesson, that's what we should have learned from Rolling Hills. It's a small percentage change went the other direction, and then we completely reversed our decision. We didn't allow for any room for error.
Can I just get some clarification to that? Because the error in Rolling Hills was small initially. The issue was that when it was compounded over time
Correct.
into the 5 years,
Correct.
that's where it's more significant. So when you use that 3%, that 3% variable is at the 5-year point?
That's 3% comparing your numbers so one projection to the next projection. So I don't know specifically if it's at the 5-year point, but that's what they've given me as when you look at your two projections, if they're within 2 to 3% of each other, they're comparable.
I'd like some clarity on what that means, because if it's a 3% variable in the first year, when you compound that, then the 5-year differential could be like 20% or something. Like it could be a wildly high number, but so, I mean, I would like to understand what falls within a comparable projection and what doesn't. I mean, more specifically, because that percentage is confusing to me on where you're looking at it.
3% is a funny, fascinating number. 3%, 11,000 is 330, which is the amount that this guy wrote, that we're claiming this guy was off when his first projections was revised. It's just funny. It's you're talking about minutia, but I think this points to, all of the discussion. But what this points to for me is that when we get into redistricting, trying to redistrict the perfect number, it's never going to work, because that was we had a move of 9 children on one of these plans. It's never going to work. That's wrong. Forgive me. That's silly. To try and part it so precisely. Because, I think in that situation, a family with 4 kids moves out and the whole plan's gone. So, I hear the 2 to 3%, and hopefully what it comes down to is 2 to 3% in the way we like or not like. And I think you're cutting it closer than needs to be. I hear you say 2 to 3%. On 11,000 student population, I hear Denise's point, which is, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, where are we? But
I think your point is 3% after 5 years is a small number, but 3% each year.
Especially because
compounded
Correct.
is a
they
big
put
number.
at the plus or minus one, so the range of
Yes.
the projection gets wider. And so if it's a 3% and then you're adding that,
Yes, I will get clarification on that. I think that, in making this decision, I think when you're talking about now you're gonna have different projections, what are you going to do if they're off? So what's the decision? Which demographer are you going to go with? Which one's right, which one's wrong? And that also then dictates additional work and money that you might need to spend, because if you decide that you're going to go with one of these demographers instead of the work that's been done so far, then we're looking at minimally, when you look at the total in that second to last column, that would be the minimal cost. I'm sure that probably with other things that they would add in to what the contract would be for the redistricting services, it would be a little bit higher than that. How much exactly, I don't know, because I've not asked them to do a full proposal for all redistricting services. So I think that's something that when you're making a decision, that's important to consider. What are the ramifications for the what if? What if the numbers are disparate? And then what do we do?
I think it's really helpful that you did some projection as to what that cost could look like if it's has a long tail on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, in part, if the numbers are vastly different, one measure of confidence would be to see what the fall enrollment is and to see which demographer is made a better prediction for next year.
It comes down to, at this point, is there a general agreement that we're going to engage a new demographer? I guess that's kind of what we're, the question of what we do with the numbers at the end only matter if we hire one. So is the general consensus we're going to hire one at this point without saying which one? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think we have a choice.
Pretty uniform. And so we come down to, of the three, and I guess one of my questions to whoever spoke to the references was, looking at those references from your knowledge, which most closely associate or mimic our community? Which one has a similar, if you were looking at my example, I think one had Reading.
Correct.
Reading would be a tough comparison to us. It's a city school. It's actually suffering some financial setbacks, different environment. So I'm looking for which of those districts, as you look at them, have they worked in our suburban schools to a greater metropolitan area, upper middle class covering, and not I'm sorry, I keep throwing these two guys, but a regional district rather than a co-located, collinear district with, Mount Lebanon is Mount Lebanon and Mount Lebanon schools. Others are not. They encompass multiple. Which, I don't want to ask you to recommend any of these, but I'm asking you which, as you look at those other districts, which districts would call out to you that they're close to what we do?
So Lower Merion would probably be the closest to us and who we are. Penn Manor is it's in Lancaster County. It's encompassed by the borough of Millersville, where Millersville University is Penn Manor School District. It has some preserved farmland, much like we do. They're smaller than we are, but I would say from a demographic perspective, economically, they're.
So that's future thing. Anything Cropper or Davis?
So Cropper, Ephrata is a much smaller school district than we are, and that's in Lancaster County. Reading is, again, you said a city school district. Carthage Central, I do not know about them. And West Jefferson as well, I do not know about. Davis demographics, Manheim Central is a much more rural school district than we would be here, and smaller. I believe their population is maybe 5,000 or a little less than 5,000. And of course, Scranton, Erie would be more urbanish.
And my final question, and then is, was there engagement primarily for scoping for construction or long-term capital planning in terms of building, or was it in terms of redistricting? Do we know what their engagement were?
So I will tell you that with Future Think, I've tried to reach out to both Cheltenham and Lower Merion and have yet to be able to get a response from anyone in either of those districts that actually knows anything about the use of them. I think turnover of people has caused that. Penn Manor used, and I did not call Phoenixville because I had a hard time on looking on their website trying to figure out if they actually did, when they used them and timing of that. Penn Manor used them predominantly to do some redistricting. They had a particular area of their district at the elementary level that was growing much greater than other places. So they looked to try to get some numbers to kind of move some students at the elementary level. So theirs was in some ways similar to what we're doing. Reading has used them for a lot of zoning, looking at population and enrollment. Now, I will say, when I talked to the folks from Reading, they spoke very highly of Cropper, and they did mention that one of the reasons they chose Cropper GIS was because of their work with other urban districts. And that was something that they spoke very highly of, but also have been very pleased. And actually, of the three, the Reading School District has commented to me very specifically that their enrollment projections have been spot on with their actual numbers, like maybe a couple kids here and there, but pretty spot on.
Dr. Elliott, since we're looking for an alternative demographer to the one we're using now, do any of those three strike you as taking a more novel approach to their work, have a different methodology?
So Cropper's methodology is going to be different than the other two. The way that, and this again is based on my conversation with them as well as trying to make sure I understand their proposal. So I do not claim to be an expert at all, but they really look at census data. And what's different about what they do is looking at census data, not only for the district, but for the surrounding area, because they believe that understanding beyond the scope of just your district boundaries helps you to get a sense of changes over time in an area, where they look at the women in childbearing years, mortality rates, and migration. They believe that all is a factor. So that's one of the things that they do that's different. They also look at historical data. They look at your particular attendance areas and things, but that piece is something that's a little bit different in how they kind of calculate their population forecast, because they believe it's important to look beyond just your historical enrollment data to figure things out. So that one would be the one that would be most different or most novel, as you said.
Anybody else? Do you need a?
I like the idea that they do it a little differently. So when you said that very in the beginning, I was a little more towards let's have a different approach. Let's see, because if somebody takes a completely novel approach, and let's go with the 5-year projections within 3%, I think we have something to build confidence on. If it comes up drastically different, I do think we have hard decisions to make.
Mm-hmm.
We have committed a lot of work, but frankly, hard decisions will be better than making wrong decisions that have kids going the wrong place. So, I think it's we may have to look at 2 demographers in the room with us, and maybe a couple of our own employees, Bob or Andy, people who have math kind of minds and ask some questions and try to figure out where the differences are. I don't know, throwing out ideas.
So,
We're
but that,
gonna-
well, that means we'd have to.
I'm gonna get inside proper in the same
Okay.
room and say, you guys, you came up with this and you came up with this, where's the difference?
At this point, your,
But,
your
my
voice
issue
is,
would be proper.
is proper. So I guess we'll ask it in the inverse question, which is, would anybody have an objection to going forward with proper versus the other two?
I just think it's too soon for me. I'd like to,
Okay, well,
I'd like to, yeah.
I mean, we just,
I like the different method as well, and I thought about that when I first saw it, but I'm not prepared to.
I'm not,
Lose an opinion.
well, we have to come to something coming out of this, otherwise we're just gonna.
Do we? I thought it
Well,
was.
no, well, we can pick someone tonight. We can give direction about which one we're leaning towards and need more information about. Is there any one of them that we would disqualify, that we would not want to pursue or go forward with? Something, otherwise we walk out, I don't know, what are we gonna know between now and later?
Or form a subcommittee that wants to interview. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can do, but I think we've got a lot of information here. Does anybody have any strong feelings about any of these other demographers or proper?
Well, I'd like to go with Cropper because a Sundell and what's the other one we used?
Decision Insight.
Decision Insight used similar methodologies, and their numbers were similar. So I think if you go with Future Think or Davis, because I mean, you know, if the methodology is the same, you're going to get more of the same. I'm really intrigued to see what a different methodology will show. In a perfect world, you know, maybe it's going to be very similar to what Sundell came up with, and then everybody has confidence because, you know, this is now a third iteration of this, you know, that confirms the numbers. And so I'm not sure, what is, you want to just think about it, or what is the delay? Because we all agree that we needed a new one. Do you want to see different? I'm just confused, but.
Well, I guess I have some other questions, and my first question would be, if not, because my impression from the administration is you'd prefer to continue with the demographer we have, right? And absent that, my question would be, which one of these, because they're even listed, you know, in a certain order, and I don't know why that is, but which one of these folks are?
In the order that I got the proposal.
That's okay. It's not alphabetical, so I just wanted to know. Which one spoke to you more? And then you started going through the recommendations, but there's recommendations that you get, or references that you get, where people say, yeah, they did a great job. And then there's kind of raving fans, right? And yes, they did a wonderful job. They're spot on. These are great things to hear. So I'd like to hear more what your thoughts are, your thoughts, Dr. Frazier's thoughts.
Well, the references were all, as you said, raving fans. Like, they were all very, very, very positive about the work they've done.
For crop.
All of them.
All of them.
Yes, all three. Very, very good. Talk very strongly about them. You know, from my perspective, in thinking about, you know, I think the point Wendy made, and I think, you know, Ed was kind of alluding to as well about, and Denise too, a different methodology might be beneficial to look at. Okay, this company does it differently, and you know, they're bringing in some very interesting data to the calculation. So that might be very good for us to look at and see. So if I were, you know, picking or putting one at the top of the list right now, it would be Cropper. And I think in addition to that, the one thing that does worry me about them is the 6 to 8 weeks. However, from a cost perspective, if you're looking at that, we end up with just an enrollment projection and it aligns or is comparable to what we currently have,
Right.
that we can keep working with the work we've already done, then, you know, comparing the 16,000 to the 15,000, I don't think there's enough of a difference in that, just the enrollment projection amount to warrant that we should do Future Think over Cropper from a cost perspective from that lens. So those are kind of the reasons why I would lean towards Cropper as the one for us to pursue and maybe get a little bit more information, but to definitely get some more firm work from them.
And then the other question that Andy brought up were, what are the other expenses that we, like the on-site expenses? that, are they included or not? So I'd want to know that
Correct.
information, because that could be drastically different from one to the other.
Yeah, and I will check on
Yeah,
that.
1,500 for an onsite coming from Ohio.
Or Delaware, it looks like they're.
Well, it's Delaware, Ohio.
That's Delaware. Yeah, and a flight in and out of Ohio to most of those airports is $1,000 to start.
Yeah.
So that, I don't think they're expensive. Yeah,
I will check on that.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just.
flying in and out of
It's
Ohio.
hourly rate, look at it, it's 135 an hour, 8-hour business day. That's what it is. It's their hourly rate plus expenses.
Yeah, so expenses aren't captured.
I like the idea of
Dr. Early?
they don't even use this one.
All right, all right, Dr. Early, so you're gonna get back to us on that cost thing.
Mhm.
Anything else? Anybody have any other questions that you want to pursue?
Out of curiosity, if you're gonna talk to proper, if you look them up online, they're working with other school districts, they didn't give you references for them. So maybe it pays to speak to those school districts.
Well, I mean, in their proposal, I have a whole list of
Okay,
districts
okay.
that they've worked.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm saying just
I
West-
chose-
Yeah, West Jefferson was tiny.
Yeah, and I chose to look
Oh,
at.
no, I thought that
schools.
was the only one thing, I'm sorry.
No, they actually, except for one of them, they just actually encouraged me to call Manheim Central. And nobody else like mentioned a specific one, so I just picked from the list that they had.
Can I just ask one other question? I'm sorry. So we had 7 responses. You say no?
No, I said yeah.
So we had 7 responses. What knocked out the other 4 briefly?
So we had, well, we didn't have 7 responses. I looked at probably eight demographers, and some of them I ruled out and didn't even bother to ask. Some of that was because there were a couple of firms that were in New York, but it seemed like from everything I could tell on their website and everything they were posting, they only work with New York schools. They don't work outside of their state. There was 1 or 2, I think from New Jersey that were that way. And then a couple of the other proposals that I got, they lacked some detail, or cost was prohibitive. I thought it was a little bit too much cost. So these 3, based on researching them and talking to all 3 firms, they seemed like the best fit for what we need to do.
Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? Public comment?
I don't trust any 10-year projections. So that would take the first 2 out for me already. I think even 7 years, those kids aren't even born yet. And I like a 2-year by school enrollment that the last one offers, Davis. And also, it seems like you'd be buying their software and they use school site redistricting, and we could keep using the software with training. So after we get the initial projections, if there tends to be, like, right now, there's no housing boom going on, mortgage rates are going up, maybe things will be going the way they're going for a while, which is all the old people are still gonna live in their houses. And we're not gonna get in a new whiff of kids. This decision could save you millions of dollars. Because up until Rolling Hills, we were building classrooms onto every school that we have renovated. And we've also made a decision that we want a 90% enrollment in each school, which leaves, in my mind, way too much room in each school if, in fact, enrollment's going down. Is enrollment going down? Well, according to what we put in the Act 34 hearing booklet for Wrightstown, it goes up for about 5 years and then goes down again. And in that case, we don't need all these classrooms. And if we don't need these classrooms, we could be spending this money, any taxpayer money, on educational things and other things and be more efficient. I'm against adding the classrooms to Wrightstown for 240 elementary kids who live in Wrightstown. And now half of them are going to go up to Salt Limestone. That's a whole nother topic. But this community does not want to do what the redistricting committee is proposing, which is taking kids from wherever, Village Shires, and sending them to Newtown. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard of. So there's other things to be talked about.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I know when we were talking about moving to Wrightstown, students during the construction, there was a survey sent out to the Wrightstown community about what they wanted to do. Was it considered, or would you even think about doing a similar survey to the areas that are going to be affected by the redistricting? And perhaps get enough people that want to go, and it's a voluntary type of redistricting. I mean, you guys, you're all on Facebook, you hear all the buzz. People are like, I'll go, I'll send my child. Maybe there's enough people, you know, people complain that their neighborhood's affected, some kids are going, other kids aren't. They're like, other people say, well, I want to go. Why don't we do a survey to the schools that are affected, to the areas that are affected, and see if you can get enough people that voluntarily want to go. You don't have to spend the money for the demography or the time. I mean, it's just a thought.
Anybody else? No one else? Okay. If no one else, thank you all. We're adjourned. Good night.
Thank you.
Wendy?
So